Captain Zethkar gripped the control panel as his ship shook violently. Sparks flew from broken circuits above his head. The smell of burning metal filled the air. His forearms moved quickly across different controls, trying to keep his ship from falling apart. "Captain, the quantum drive is failing," called out his first officer, Crix. The smaller alien's voice cracked with fear. "We have maybe 1 hour before complete shutdown." Zethkar's large insect eyes looked at the star map. Nexus Station 7 was close, only 30 minutes away if they could keep flying. But his ship, the Stellar Whisper, was barely holding together. 3 days ago, plasma raiders had attacked them near the Void Rim. The battle had left his merchant vessel damaged and limping through space. "Set course for Nexus 7, Zethkar ordered. His crew looked worried. They all knew the ship might not make it. The Stellar Whisper crawled through space, leaving a trail of sparking debris behind it. Other ships in the area kept their distance. No one wanted to be near a vessel that might explode at any moment. Finally, the massive shape of Nexus Station 7 appeared ahead of them. The trading station was huge, bigger than most cities. Ships from dozens of different worlds flew around it like metal insects. Lights blinked everywhere, showing the busy traffic of galactic trade. "Requesting emergency docking," Zethkar spoke into his communication device. "Stellar Whisper, you are cleared for emergency bay assignment," came the reply. "Please proceed to designated repair facility." Zethkar guided his dying ship toward the station. The docking process was rough. His landing systems were damaged, so the ship bounced and scraped as it settled into the repair bay. Steam hissed from cracked pipes. Warning lights flashed red all over the ship. As soon as the ship was secure, Zethkar stepped outside. The repair bay was huge, with high ceilings and bright lights. He could see other damaged ships being worked on by different alien repair teams. "Captain Zethkar?" a voice called out. The captain turned to see a human walking toward him. The man was shorter than most aliens in the station, with brown skin and dark hair. He wore simple work clothes covered in grease stains. "I am Jake Martinez," the human said, extending his hand. "Welcome to Bay 47. Zethkar looked down at the small human. He had heard about these creatures from Earth. They were new to galactic society, barely 200 years since first contact. Most aliens considered them primitive. Their technology was simple compared to other species. "You are the repair supervisor?" Zethkar asked, surprised. His translator made his clicking language sound like rough common galactic. "That's right," Jake said with a smile. "Let's take a look at your ship." Zethkar hesitated. Through the bay windows, he could see other repair facilities. Bay 23 belonged to the Altarians, known throughout the galaxy for their perfect engineering. Their tall, blue-skinned workers used floating holographic displays to diagnose problems. Everything they did was precise and exact. Bay 31 was run by the Etherians. These energy beings could interface directly with ship computers, understanding systems in ways that seemed magical. Their repairs were always flawless. The Korthax had Bay 15. These mechanical beings were like living computers themselves. They could calculate repair times down to the exact second and never made mistakes. "Perhaps I should consider the Altarian facility," Zethkar said slowly. "Or the Etherian specialists. My ship has suffered extensive damage." Jake nodded, still smiling. "You're free to choose whoever you want, Captain. But since you're already here, why don't you let me take a quick look? No charge for the inspection." Something in the human's voice made Zethkar pause. There was confidence there, but also something else. Kindness, maybe. Most repair supervisors treated damaged ships like problems to solve. This human seemed to treat them like patients to heal. "Very well," Zethkar agreed. "But I make no promises about using your services," Jake called out to his team. 2 other humans appeared from behind some equipment. One was a woman with long black hair tied back in a practical ponytail. The other was a younger man with red hair and freckles. "This is Amy Rodriguez, my lead engineer," Jake said, pointing to the woman. "And this is Pete Collins, our systems specialist." Amy waved at the captain while Pete gave a friendly nod. Neither seemed intimidated by the 8-foot-tall insect alien standing before them. "Let's see what we're dealing with," Jake said, pulling out a handheld scanner. The device looked ancient compared to the holographic systems used by other species, but Jake handled it with the ease of long practice. The three humans walked around, the stellar whisper, pointing at different areas of damage. They talked to each other in quiet voices using technical terms that Zethkar's translator couldn't quite handle. But their body language was easy to read. They weren't worried or discouraged by what they saw. "Captain," Amy called out from near, the quantum drive housing. "This is interesting. Your drive system has been modified." Zethkar walked over to where the human woman was kneeling beside an access panel. "Yes. The modifications were made on Kepler Prime 2 years ago. Standard upgrade package." Amy looked up at him with bright eyes. "Standard for who?" "This is Altarian quantum core technology connected to Thrawn power regulators and Kelt navigation systems. I've never seen anything like it." "Is that a problem?" Zethkar asked, suddenly worried. "Problem?" Amy laughed. "This is amazing. Whoever did this work was brilliant. They took 3 completely different technologies and made them work together. The efficiency ratings must be incredible." Pete had climbed inside the ship and was examining the damaged sections. His voice echoed from inside the hull. "Jake, you need to see this. The plasma damage created some kind of resonance pattern in the hull plating." Jake squeezed through a damaged opening to join his teammate. Zethkar could hear them talking excitedly about frequencies and wave patterns. Their enthusiasm was strange to him. Most repair crews saw damage as damage. These humans seemed to see it as something interesting. "Captain Zethkar," Jake called, out as he emerged from the ship. "We can fix your ship, but more than that, we can make it better than it was before." "Better?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked in confusion. "How is that possible? The ship is severely damaged." "Sometimes," Jake said, wiping grease from his hands, "damage shows you things about a ship that you never knew were there. Your hull resonance, the way your hybrid systems are integrated, the stress patterns in your frame. All of that tells a story, and once we understand that story, we can write a better ending." Zethkar looked around the simple human repair bay. No holographic displays, no floating diagnostic computers, no automated repair drones. Just 3 humans with basic tools and confident smiles. In the distance, he could see the sophisticated facilities of other species. Logic told him to go there. His insurance would certainly prefer the established reputation of Altarian precision or Etherian perfection. But something about these humans made him want to take a chance. "How long will repairs take?" he asked. "Give us 3 days," Jake said. "Your ship will be ready to fly and you'll be amazed at how she performs." Zethkar made his decision. "Very well, Jake Martinez. My ship is yours to heal." Jake Martinez stood inside the Stellar Whisper with a small flashlight in his hand. The ship was dark and cold. Most of the power was shut down to prevent more damage. He moved slowly through the corridors, looking at everything with careful eyes. "Amy, come look at this," Jake called out. His voice echoed in the empty hallway. Amy Rodriguez crawled through a maintenance hatch, her tool belt clanking against the metal. She had grease on her face and her hands were dirty from working on the ship's systems. "What did you find?" she asked, joining Jake near a junction box. "Look at how these power cables are routed," Jake said, pointing his light at a tangle of wires. "This isn't standard Altarian work. Someone hand-wired these connections." Amy knelt down and traced the cables with her finger. "You're right. And look here. These junction points have been reinforced with some kind of polymer coating. That's not in any manual I've ever seen." Pete Collins appeared from another corridor, carrying a diagnostic tablet. "I've been mapping the ship's systems," he said. "This vessel has components from at least 6 different civilizations. The life support is Kelt technology. The navigation system is hegemony standard. The weapons array is old Thrawn military surplus." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "And somehow it all works together. The question is how." Outside the ship, Captain Zethkar watched the humans work. Their methods were strange to him. The Altarian repair teams would have connected their diagnostic computers by now. Within minutes, they would have a complete analysis of every damaged system. The repairs would follow exact procedures laid out in technical manuals. But the humans worked differently. They touched things. They listened to sounds. Jake had actually put his ear against the quantum drive housing, as if the machine could whisper its secrets to him. "Captain," said Crix, Zethkar's first officer, "the other repair bays have sent estimates. The Altarians can fix our ship in 2 days for 12,000 credits. The Etherians quote 18 hours and 15,000 credits. And the humans?" Zethkar asked. "They haven't given us a quote yet. They say they need to understand the ship first." Zethkar clicked his mandibles in thought. Understanding seemed like a luxury they couldn't afford. His cargo was time-sensitive, and every day in port cost him money. Inside the ship, Jake was having a conversation with Amy about something that seemed impossible. "The quantum resonance is all wrong," Amy said, reading numbers from her scanner. "According to every manual I've studied, this drive shouldn't be able to maintain stable output." "But it does," Jake replied. "For 2 years this ship has been flying with a drive system that theoretically can't work. So either the theory is wrong or we're missing something." Pete looked up from his tablet. "Maybe both. Look at this power distribution chart. The energy flow doesn't follow any standard pattern, but the efficiency is actually higher than normal." Jake smiled. "That's what I love about real ships versus textbook ships. Real ships find ways to work, even when they shouldn't." 3 hours. Later, Jake emerged from the stellar whisper covered in dust and oil. He found Captain Zethkar waiting in the bay's small office area. "Captain, I need to tell you something about your ship," Jake said, wiping his hands on a rag. Zethkar braced himself for bad news. "What is the extent of the damage?" "The damage is bad, but that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about who built this ship." "It was constructed at the Vega shipyard's standard merchant class hull," Zethkar replied. Jake shook his head. "No, I mean who really built it. Someone took a basic cargo hauler and turned it into something special. All those modifications, all those different systems working together. That wasn't done by a shipyard, that was done by someone who understood ships in a deeper way." Zethkar was quiet for a moment. "My father," he said finally. "He was an engineer before he became a merchant. He said standard ships were too limited. He spent years modifying the Stellar Whisper, adding systems from different worlds." "Your father was an artist," Jake said with genuine admiration. "This ship shouldn't work as well as it does. But somehow all these different technologies talk to each other. It's beautiful." While they talked, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the repair bay. A voice came over the communication system. All ships. We have multiple vessels with quantum drive failures. All repair facilities, please prepare for emergency arrivals." Through the bay windows, they could see ships limping toward the station. Some were barely moving, their drives flickering and dying. Others had already shut down and were being towed by rescue vessels. Jake watched the incoming ships with growing concern. "Amy, Pete, get out here," he called. His team gathered around as more damaged ships appeared on the horizon. The other repair bays were already preparing their diagnostic equipment. Holographic displays lit up throughout the station as alien engineers began analyzing the crisis. "This is bad," Pete said, checking his tablet for news updates. "Reports are coming in from 6 different sectors. Quantum drives are failing everywhere." Amy frowned as she watched a Kelt destroyer struggle to maintain power. "Look at the pattern of the failures. All different ship types, all different drive systems, but they're all failing in the same way." Jake turned to Captain Zethkar. "Has your ship experienced any quantum instability recently?" "No," Zethkar replied. "The drive has been running normally, even after the battle damage." "That's interesting," Jake said thoughtfully. "All these ships are failing, but yours is stable. What makes your ship different?" Over the next hour, more ships arrived at the station. The sophisticated repair bays were overwhelmed. Their diagnostic computers could identify the quantum instability, but they couldn't find a solution that worked for different types of ships. The Altarian team was frustrated. Their procedures worked perfectly for Altarian ships, but failed when applied to vessels with mixed technology. The Etherian specialists could interface with individual ship computers, but they couldn't understand how different systems interacted with each other. Jake watched the chaos and had an idea. "Amy, Bring me the resonance readings from the stellar whisper. Which ones? Amy asked. All of them. Engine resonance, hull resonance, quantum field resonance. Everything. As Amy gathered the data, Jake studied the failing ships through the bay windows. Each one was different, but they all showed the same symptoms. Their quantum drives were becoming unstable, creating dangerous energy fluctuations. Pete, I need you to scan those incoming ships. Get me resonance readings on their quantum signatures. Pete pointed his scanner at the nearest damaged vessel. Jake, look at this. The quantum frequency is completely chaotic. It's like the drive can't decide what frequency to maintain. Jake compared Pete's readings to the data from the stellar whisper. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. The failing ships all had quantum signatures that were fighting against each other. But the stellar whisper's signature was stable and harmonious. That's it, Jake said suddenly. The stellar whisper isn't failing because it learned how to harmonize different technologies. Your father didn't just connect different systems together. He made them work in harmony. Amy looked at the data with new understanding. The quantum resonance patterns are synchronized. All the different components are operating at compatible frequencies. Captain Zethkar listened to the humans discuss his ship with growing amazement. You mean my father's modifications actually make the ship more stable? Not just more stable, Jake replied. More adaptable. Your ship can handle quantum interference. That would destroy other vessels because it already knows how to make different systems work together. Outside, the crisis was getting worse. More ships were arriving with quantum failures and the traditional repair methods weren't working. The station's commanders were starting to panic. Jake looked at his small team, then at Captain Zethkar. Captain, I think we might be the only ones who can solve this problem, but we're going to need your ship to do it. My ship is damaged, Zethkar reminded him. Jake smiled. Not damaged, Captain. Modified. And those modifications might just save everyone on this station. The alarm bells got louder as more damaged ships crowded around Nexus Station 7. Jake Martinez stood at the window of Bay 47, watching the chaos outside. Ships were floating dead in space, their quantum drives completely shut down. Some had been towed in by rescue vessels while others drifted helplessly. Jake, we have a problem, Amy Rodriguez called out from her workstation. She was monitoring the station's communication channels. The Crimson Fleet has been spotted 3 hours away. They're heading straight for us. Jake felt his stomach drop. The Crimson Fleet were the most feared pirates in this sector. They attacked stations and ships that couldn't defend themselves. With half the vessels around the station dead in space, Nexus 7 was like a sitting target. How many ships? Pete Collins asked, looking up from his diagnostic equipment. 15 warships, Amy replied. Maybe more. And with all these quantum drive failures, most of the ships here can't run or fight. Captain Zethkar had been listening to the humans talk. His forearms moved nervously as he processed this information. My ship cannot fight pirates. The Stellar Whisper is a merchant vessel, not a warship. Jake turned away from the window and looked at the alien captain. Maybe not right now, but what if we could change that? Change what? Zethkar asked, confused. Your ship. What if we could turn the Stellar Whisper into something that could fight? Pete laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Jake, that's crazy. We're mechanics, not miracle workers. You can't turn a cargo hauler into a battleship. Can't we? Jake walked over to the damaged ship sitting in their bay. He placed his hand on the metal hull, feeling the vibrations from the systems inside. This ship already does things it shouldn't be able to do. It runs on mixed technology that should never work together. But it does work, because someone understood how to make different parts into one whole. Amy joined him beside the ship. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about all those damaged ships out there. They have parts we could use. Weapons from military vessels, shields from heavy transports, engines from racing ships. What if we could take the best pieces and put them together? Zethkar's mandibles clicked rapidly. That is impossible. Different ship systems cannot be combined like that. The power requirements, the control interfaces, the structural stress, it would never work. The Altarian engineers would agree with you, Jake said with a smile. So would the Etherians and the Korthax. They think in terms of standard configurations and approved modifications. But your father didn't think that way, did he? The alien captain was quiet for a moment. No. He said that ships were like living things. They could grow and change if you understood them well enough. Jake nodded. Then let's help your ship grow. Over. The next hour, Jake's team began what looked like controlled chaos. They contacted the captains of damaged ships and asked permission to remove components that might be useful. Most aliens thought the humans had lost their minds, but they agreed because their ships weren't going anywhere anyway. Amy Rodriguez climbed inside a damaged Kelt destroyer that had been towed into Bay 52. She found the weapons control systems still intact, even though the quantum drive was dead. Working quickly, she began disconnecting the targeting computers and weapon interfaces. Pete Collins was inside a hegemony transport, removing sections of advanced shielding. The ship's captain watched nervously as the young human cut into systems that had cost millions of credits to install. Are you sure you know what you're doing? The hegemony captain asked. Honestly? No, Pete replied cheerfully. But we're going to find out. Jake worked on the Stellar Whisper itself, preparing mounting points for equipment that was never designed to fit on a merchant vessel. He welded new support beams and ran power cables through corridors that were too small for them. Other mechanics from around the station began to gather outside Bay 47. Word was spreading about the crazy humans who thought they could build a warship out of spare parts. Some aliens came to watch the disaster they expected. Others came because they were curious about human methods. This is insane, muttered an Altarian engineer to his colleague. They're violating every principle of ship design. The power distribution alone will cause system failures. But Jake's team didn't seem worried about principles. They worked by instinct, making connections that looked wrong but somehow felt right. When Amy brought the Kelt weapon systems to the Stellar Whisper, she didn't try to install them according to any manual. Instead, she studied how Captain Zethkar's father had connected other systems, and she followed the same patterns. The targeting computer needs to talk to the navigation system, she explained to Pete. But Kelt technology uses different communication protocols than Altarian navigation equipment, so we build a translator, Pete replied, pulling out a small device he had assembled from spare parts. This converter box should let them talk to each other. Jake watched his team work and felt proud of them. They weren't following any established procedures, but they understood something that the other species had forgotten. Ships weren't just collections of parts. They were systems that needed to work together as a whole. As the hours passed, the Stellar Whisper began to change. Weapon mounts appeared on its hull, connected to targeting systems that had never been designed to work together. Shield generators from 3 different civilizations were linked by power cables that snaked through the ship like veins. Captain Zethkar watched the transformation with amazement and terror. Will it work? He asked Jake. I don't know, Jake admitted. But your ship has been doing impossible things for years. Maybe it can do one more. The work continued as reports came in about the approaching Crimson Fleet. Other ships around the station were trying to repair their quantum drives, but the traditional methods weren't working. The sophisticated diagnostic computers could identify the problems, but they couldn't adapt their solutions to work with mixed technology systems. Jake had an idea about that too. During a break from working on the Stellar Whisper, he gathered his team around a workbench covered with quantum resonance readings. Look at these patterns, he said, pointing to data from different ships. Every vessel has quantum instability, but they're all unstable in different ways. The Altarian ships are oscillating at one frequency, the Kelt ships at another, the hegemony vessels at a third frequency. Amy studied the readings. It's like they're all trying to sing different songs at the same time. Exactly. And when different frequencies fight against each other, you get chaos. But what if we could get them to sing the same song? Pete looked confused. How do you synchronize quantum signatures across different technologies? Jake smiled and pointed at the Stellar Whisper. We use a ship that already knows how to harmonize different systems. Your father's modifications didn't just make different parts work together, Captain. They made them work in harmony. The alien captain's eyes widened as he understood what Jake was suggesting. You want to use my ship as some kind of tuning device? Not just a tuning device, a conductor, like the leader of an orchestra, helping all the other ships find the right frequency to work together. Outside the bay, more pirates' ships appeared, on the long-range scanners. Time was running out, but Jake's impossible plan was starting to take shape. The Stellar Whisper now carried weapons it was never designed to hold, powered by systems that shouldn't be able to work together. As Jake made the final connections between the ship's new components, he wondered if they had created something amazing, or something that would explode the moment they turned it on. There was only one way to find out. Captain Zethkar sat in the pilot seat of his transformed ship, staring at controls he barely recognized. The Stellar Whisper looked nothing like the merchant vessel he had flown for years. Weapon displays glowed where cargo monitors used to. B-shield controls replaced environmental systems. The whole bridge hummed with energy from technologies that had never been designed to work together. "All systems ready, Captain," Amy Rodriguez called out from the engineering station she had built behind the pilot seat. Her hands moved over controls that were a mix of Celt, Altarian, and human components. "Weapons online," Pete Collins reported, from his position at what used to be the navigation console, "though I have no idea if they'll actually fire when we need them to." Jake Martinez stood behind Captain Zethkar, watching the tactical display that showed 15 red dots approaching the station. The Crimson Fleet was 1 hour away, and most of the ships around Nexus 7 were still dead in space, their quantum drives refusing to work. "Captain, are you ready to try this?" Jake asked. Zethkar's forearms moved nervously over the controls. "I am ready to try not dying," he replied. "Beyond that, I make no promises." The Stellar Whisper undocked from the repair bay with a smooth motion that surprised everyone. Despite all the modifications, the ship flew like it had been born to carry these new systems. Jake watched the power readings with amazement. Everything was working together, just like he had hoped. "Jake, look at this," Amy said, pointing to her displays. "The quantum resonance is perfect. All the different systems are synchronized." As they flew away from the station, other ships began to follow them. The vessels with working drives had volunteered to help defend Nexus 7, but most of them were cargo haulers and passenger ships. They weren't built for fighting pirates. "This is Captain Morris of the freighter Golden Wing," came a voice over the communication system. "My quantum drive just came back online. How is that possible?" Jake smiled and keyed the communication channel. "Captain Morris, stay close to us. Our ship is broadcasting a synchronization signal. As long as you're near us, your drive should stay stable." More ships reported their drives coming back to life as they moved closer to the Stellar Whisper. The alien captains didn't understand how it was working, but they could see the results on their instruments. "Approaching pirate fleet," Pete announced. "They're moving into attack formation." Through the viewports, they could see the Crimson Fleet ships. They were sleek and dangerous, built for speed and destruction. The largest vessel was a battlecruiser with enough firepower to destroy the entire station. "All ships, this is Admiral Korax of the Crimson Fleet," came a threatening voice over the communication channels. "Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with complete destruction." Jake looked at the mixed collection of cargo ships, passenger vessels, and one modified merchant ship that made up their defense force. By any logical measure, they didn't stand a chance. "All ships, this is the Stellar Whisper," Captain Zethkar announced. "We will not surrender. Prepare for battle." The pirates attacked first, sending waves of plasma fire toward the defenders. The Stellar Whisper dodged and weaved through space, its pilot using every trick his father had taught him about flying a heavily modified ship. "Shields holding," Amy reported as enemy fire splashed against their protective barriers. "The hegemony shield generators are working perfectly with the Celt power systems." Pete fired back with the ship's new weapons. Beams of energy lanced out from gun mounts that shouldn't exist, striking a pirate fighter and sending it spinning away disabled. "Direct hit," Pete shouted. "The targeting system is working better than it did on the original Celt destroyer." Around them, other ships in their small fleet were fighting desperately. The freighter Golden Wing used its industrial cutting lasers as weapons. A passenger liner deployed emergency shields and rammed a pirate scout ship. None of them were warships, but they were all fighting with everything they had. The battle raged for 20 minutes. The pirates had better weapons and more experience, but something strange was happening. Ships that should have been destroyed were somehow surviving. Vessels that should have run out of power kept fighting. "Jake, look at the quantum readings," Amy said urgently. "Something's happening to the pirate ships." Jake studied the scanner displays. The enemy vessels were showing the same quantum instability that had affected the ships around the station. Their drives were starting to fluctuate and fail. "It's the synchronization field," Jake realized. "Our ship is broadcasting a harmony frequency, but the pirate ships aren't designed to work with it. Their systems are fighting against the signal." Captain Zethkar understood immediately. "We are creating the same problem for them that was affecting our ships earlier." "Exactly, but worse because their ships aren't designed to adapt like yours is." As they watched, pirate vessels began to experience power failures. Weapons went offline, shields collapsed, and engines sputtered. The battlecruiser that had seemed so threatening minutes ago was now drifting helplessly, its quantum drive completely dead. "This is impossible." Admiral Corax's voice cracked over the communication channel. "Our ships are the most advanced in the sector. How are civilian vessels defeating us?" Jake keyed the communication system. "Admiral, your ships are designed to work alone, following rigid specifications. Our ships have learned to work together, adapting to each other's frequencies. In a synchronized fleet, individual excellence matters less than harmony." The remaining pirate ships that could still fly began to retreat. They had come expecting easy prey, and instead found something they couldn't understand or defeat. As the Crimson Fleet disappeared into deep space, cheers erupted over the communication channels. Captain Morris of the Golden Wing was laughing with relief. The passenger liner's crew was singing victory songs in 3 different languages. But Jake was focused on something else. As the battle had progressed, he had noticed that more and more ships were joining their synchronized formation. Vessels that had been dead in space for hours were suddenly coming back to life. "Amy, Pete, look at this," Jake said, pointing to the tactical display. "Every ship within 50 kilometers of us now has a stable quantum signature. We're not just synchronizing with nearby vessels anymore. We're creating a field effect that's spreading." Amy checked her instruments with growing excitement. "The resonance pattern is propagating through space. It's like we've created a zone where quantum instability can't exist." Captain Zethkar looked at his transformed ship with new understanding. "My father always said the Stellar Whisper was special, but I never imagined it could do something like this." "Your father built more than a ship," Jake replied. "He built a bridge between different technologies, and today, that bridge saved an entire station." As they flew back toward Nexus 7, Jake thought about what they had accomplished. They hadn't won the battle through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had won by making different things work together in harmony. The other species would study what had happened here for years, trying to understand how humans had turned a collection of damaged ships into an effective fighting force. But Jake knew the real secret wasn't in their technology. It was in their willingness to see possibilities where others saw only problems. 3 weeks after the battle at Nexus Station 7, Jake Martinez stood in his expanded repair bay watching alien ships line up for service. The queue stretched for kilometers into space, with vessels from dozens of different worlds waiting, their turn to be worked on by human mechanics. "Jake, we have a problem," Amy Rodriguez called out from her new office overlooking the main work floor. "The Galactic Engineering Council wants to schedule an inspection next week." Jake wiped grease from his hands and looked up at his lead engineer. "What kind of inspection?" "The kind where they try to figure out how we're doing things they say are impossible," Pete Collins answered, emerging from under a Thrawn-heavy cruiser. "Word is spreading fast about what happened here. The news of the miracle of Nexus 7 had traveled through galactic communication networks faster than the fastest ships. Every alien captain in 3 sectors had heard about the human mechanics, who turned damaged cargo ships into an effective fighting force, and who somehow solved quantum drive failures that had stumped the most advanced civilizations. Captain Zethkar walked into the bay, his forearms carrying data pads filled with repair requests. The Varan captain had become Jake's unofficial business manager, helping to coordinate the flood of ships seeking human repairs. "Jake, 3 more military vessels have requested consultations," Zethkar announced. "The Kelt Defense Force wants to know if you can modify their destroyers for better multi-species cooperation. The Hegemony Navy is asking about upgrading their communication systems to work with allied fleets." Jake looked around his bay, which had grown from a simple 3-person operation to a complex facility with 20 human mechanics and a dozen alien apprentices learning human repair methods. It was almost too much to believe. "Remember when our biggest worry was paying rent on this place?" Pete asked with a grin. "That was a month ago," Amy replied. "Now we're booked solid for the next 6 months, and Jake is getting offers to open repair facilities in 12 different star systems." The transformation had started immediately after the battle. Within days, alien captains who had never considered human services were making special trips to Nexus 7. They came not just for repairs, but for modifications and upgrades that other species said couldn't be done. Jake walked over to examine the Thrawn cruiser that Pete had been working on. The ship's captain had requested something that sounded simple, but was actually incredibly complex. He wanted weapon systems from 4 different civilizations integrated into his vessel, so he could work effectively with mixed-species military units. "How's it going, Pete?" Jake asked. "Better than expected," Pete replied, sliding out from under the ship. "Once you understand that each weapon system is like a musical instrument, you just need to help them play the same song." That was the key insight that had changed everything. While other species focused on making their individual technologies perfect, humans focused on making different technologies work together. It was a fundamental difference in thinking that was revolutionizing galactic engineering. 3 alien engineers stood nearby watching Pete work. They had been sent by their governments to study human methods, but they were struggling to understand what they were seeing. "The power distribution makes no mathematical sense," muttered a tall Altarian engineer. "The energy flows violate at least 6 principles of quantum mechanics. Yet it works more efficiently than our standard configurations," admitted his Etherean colleague. "The performance improvements are measurable and significant." Jake had tried to explain human engineering philosophy to visiting alien experts, but it was like trying to describe color to someone who had never seen. The aliens understood the technical details, but they couldn't grasp the intuitive leaps that made human repairs so effective. "We don't just fix ships," Jake had told a delegation from the Galactic Engineering Council. "We listen to them. Every ship has its own personality, its own way of doing things. Our job is to understand that personality and help it become the best version of itself." The council members had looked at him like he was speaking nonsense. Ships were machines. They insisted they didn't have personalities, but the results spoke for themselves. Ships repaired by human mechanics performed better, lasted longer, and somehow seemed more reliable than ships maintained by purely logical methods. Captain Zethkar had become something of a celebrity among alien ship captains. His modified Stellar Whisper now performed better than vessels that cost 10 times as much to build. More importantly, it had become a symbol of what was possible when different technologies were allowed to work in harmony. "Jake, you should see this," Captain Zethkar called out, holding up a communication device. "The message traffic about human repair services has increased by 300% this week. Captains are sharing stories about impossible repairs and miracle modifications." Jake read through some of the messages on the device. There were reports from across the galaxy about human mechanics performing repairs that other species had given up on. A human engineer on the rim had restored a 1,000-year-old Etherean research vessel using parts from a mining robot. Another human team had combined the engines from 3 different destroyed ships to create a propulsion system that was faster than any of the original designs. "It's happening everywhere," Jake realized. Every human repair facility is getting the same kind of results. Amy joined them, carrying a data pad with scheduling information. "We're not just busy here. I've been talking to human mechanics on 12 different worlds. They're all reporting the same thing. Alien captains are specifically requesting human services even when more advanced options are available." Jake understood why. It wasn't because human technology was better. In most cases, alien technology was far more advanced than anything humans had developed. But humans approached problems differently. They saw possibilities where others saw limitations. They found ways to make things work together that had never been tried before. The communication device in Captain Zethkar's hands chimed with an incoming message. He looked at the display and his mandibles clicked in surprise. "Jake, this message is for you. It's from the Galactic Engineering Council." Jake read the message with growing amazement. The Council, representing the most technologically advanced civilizations in the galaxy, was making an unprecedented request. They wanted humans to establish repair and modification facilities at major trade hubs throughout galactic space. "They're not just asking for our services," Jake said slowly. "They're asking us to train their engineers in human methods." "Will you do it?" Captain Zethkar asked. Jake looked around his busy repair bay. Human mechanics worked alongside alien apprentices, sharing techniques that couldn't be found in any technical manual. Ships that should have been scrapped were flying better than ever. Technologies that were never meant to work together were performing miracles of engineering. "Amy, how would you feel about running your own facility?" Jake asked. Amy grinned. "Are you offering me my own repair bay?" "I'm offering you your own star system. The Council wants facilities in 24 locations. We're going to need good people to run them." Pete looked up from his work with excitement. "Does this mean we're going galactic?" Jake nodded. "Looks like it. The universe is a big place, and apparently there are a lot of ships that need fixing." 6 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of a new repair facility orbiting a distant star. Through the windows, he could see human-run repair bays scattered across the system, each one busy with ships from across the galaxy. His communication device chimed with a message from Amy, who was now running operations in the Andromeda Trade Zone. Her facility was so busy that she had a 6-month waiting list for major modifications. Another message came from Pete, who had opened a specialized facility for military vessels near the Galactic Defense Force headquarters. He was working with alien engineers to develop new technologies that combined the best features from multiple civilizations. Jake smiled as he watched a young human engineer guide her first alien apprentice through a complex repair procedure. The apprentice was a Korthax, a species known for their logical precision. But under human guidance, the mechanical being was learning to work by intuition as well as calculation. The galaxy was changing. Ship designs were becoming more flexible, incorporating technologies from multiple species. Mixed crews were becoming common as different civilizations learned to work together more effectively. Trade routes were becoming safer as ships learned to support each other rather than operating in isolation. It had all started with one damaged ship and a human mechanic who refused to accept that something couldn't be fixed. Now human repair bays were scattered across galactic space, and the reputation for human mechanical miracles was growing stronger every day. Jake's communication device chimed one more time. The message was from Captain Zethkar, who was now running supply routes that would have been impossible before his ship's modifications. The Stellar Whisper continued to outperform vessels that cost many times more to build. The message was simple. "Thank you for showing the galaxy that different doesn't mean broken. Sometimes it just means better."